The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondel.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. We have new listeners around the world. I see some Ireland listeners. We have some UK listeners, and we picked up some Japan listeners. So welcome to you all. I am very honored tonight, everybody, to have with me Miss Keisha Jackson, 30 years plus in the industry, soul R&B singer, many records out there, and she's still performing. So welcome to the show, Keisha. Great to have you on.
Hi, Dave. It's nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. You know, Keisha, you know, you've done a lot of, your own solo work, but you've also toured with some of the biggest names in music. And matter of fact, your mom, Millie Jackson, I mean, what was that like to grow up with a famous soul singer like that, and getting into music at a young age as well?
It was pretty cool, but what I always tell people, it was my norm, you know what I mean? So it's all I knew at the time. I didn't know there was anything special about it really until probably I was in high school. Like, okay, so the other kids that I hang out with, like the Isley Brothers kids and Ray Goodman and Brown, they were in Teaneck, New Jersey as well. Chuck Jackson, he was in Teaneck, New Jersey as well. I know, of course, there were a lot of artists that were based in New York, and Teaneck, New Jersey is right across the George Washington Bridge, so it's kind of like a 15 to about 20-minute drive. So we were all hanging out with each other and playing with each other. So it was kind of the norm. We went to public school, but as kids, kids are kids. You know what I mean? So we didn't really see what was happening. You know what I mean? So when the Isley Brothers, mom is cooking and having a little party and a get-together, you don't really think anything of it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of crazy. I think I came to the realization when I was not even in high school, because I ended up going to boarding school when I got to high school. But it was when I got to college that it was kind of like, I'd say just really regular fly-by-night things, and it would be kind of like, wait a minute, what did you say? You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, so it kind of hit me kind of quick during college, my college years.
Did you find that growing up in music like that there was, whether you noticed it or not, I mean, pressure, I guess, to either get into the music business or be around music, I guess, being with such a famous, mother and being around so many famous people? I mean, was that kind of pressure to get into that, or did you want to do something else, I guess, when you were young?
Well, I didn't feel the pressure to get into it. I think my mother felt the pressure because I really wanted to do it. And it was natural because, she's a single parent, so she was my example. And I just knew that I wanted to do what she did. And, I would go to her shows when I was a kid, of course, all the time. And then when I got to be about 16, I was actually singing background before that, 14 or 15, I was singing background for her. So during, school breaks, spring break, Christmas holiday, I was always working with her as a background vocalist. And before that, I was like selling concessions and, autographed pictures and cassette tapes and things like that in the lobby of the shows, in between intermissions and stuff like that during shows. So I think she felt the pressure because I got the bug like really young, and she did not want me to do this. So it was probably, the exact opposite of what most people, in this situation usually deal with. But no, I didn't feel the pressure. I did feel pressure later when I got signed to Sony to be a little Millie Jackson. So that was strange, to say the least. But from her, no, there was no pressure. She actually did the opposite. She tried to deter me in like every way possible. She tried to keep me from doing this.
Yeah, that's always an interesting question because, asking people who are, sons or daughters of famous people, some people go one way and some people go the other. And I'm always fascinated by what, makes people either get into the same industry or say, you know what, I don't want anything to do with that industry. So it's interesting. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about, speaking of your mother, is you celebrated her 40-plus year career with Millie Mondays. I wanted to ask you about that. What kind of medium is that, and what can listeners or viewers expect from Millie Mondays?
Well, Millie Mondays is it's just me having fun on Instagram. It's just, I just decided that I wanted to, first of all, let me say this. The legacy is incredibly important to me. And I think it's important for all of I have a group called the Daughters of Legacy. And that kind of happened as a result of the Millie Mondays. It's really just a matter of making sure that people don't forget, where so much of this stuff started. And it's my way of celebrating my mother. So I just decided, literally woke up one day and was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do this. And I happened to have posted the first time on a Monday. And I decided that I wanted to do it regularly because people had so many questions, and people, always said, and they still say, is Millie on IG? You have to get her an IG account. And I was like, she wants no part of it. You know what I mean? So it was my way of kind of keeping people in touch with her. And it's just a way of celebrating her and her legacy, her as a mom first, and then her legacy through my eyes. So I can tell the stories behind the concert piece that I post, or the album cover, or the magazine photo shoot, and I'm through the child's eyes, and where I'm saying, oh my God, I remember it took her so long to get dressed this day, and this dress, how the dress might have gotten hung up, and how I hated the dress, or how I hated a particular Jet magazine photo shoot that we did, and I hated my hair that day, and I was really frustrated. You know what I mean? And she threatened me like, "You better get it together." You know what I mean? Those kinds of things that I talk about on Millie Monday. So sometimes it's just a picture. It's just a really cold picture. It's it's really dope. Like, it's kind of raunchy, or it's a piece, a sound bite that might be no more than 10 seconds long, but it's something that's very iconically Millie Jackson. You know what I mean? So Millie Mondays is just me celebrating my mom.
Right now, obviously, with the protests and everything that's going on in the world, the type of race relations and all kinds of different things that we're seeing, and just talk a little bit about that, because maybe not so much in the New York area, but when you travel all over the place, you see that what musicians had to go through at that time frame when your mom first started doing music. And talk a little bit about that, because I see a lot of documentaries, and I just wanted you to speak a little bit about the way of the world and how it was maybe for your mom and you going to shows. So
Mom wasn't ever like openly political. She just kind of did what she felt was right. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And she stood for what was right. She never really participated in public protests so much. She did everything that she did behind the scenes. As far as, because we were in New York, she's a Southern girl. She's from Georgia, Thompson, Georgia, right outside of Augusta. So, she's had that experience firsthand. But me personally, I was born in Brooklyn. And so being up north, it was different. And so in the 70s, of course, everyone had, very political music, but it was energizing. Like, it was incredible. Like, I loved it so much because it was so raw, but as far as political stuff is concerned, like the thing that I experienced as a kid with my mom directly, I think, was the protests against apartheid in South Africa.
Oh,
that was,
okay.
Yeah, that was like early 80s, I think. And, there were a lot of artists that were going to South Africa to perform because they were being paid a lot of money, and right. That was a huge thing. And because I was old enough to remember that, remember what that felt like. And there was a lot of tension. And, there were a lot of political leaders, black political leaders that were, talking to Mom and asking her not to go. And, but they never gave her any concrete reason as to why. And so a lot of it seemed really puffed up. And, you know, it was really about Sun City, you know, and a lot of the stuff that was going on then. But Mom wasn't going to Sun City. So she was trying to figure out, like, what is the problem with going to South Africa? Like, she did not understand it. And so she said that she wanted to actually have the experience and be able to come back and talk about it, as opposed to listening to the propaganda and, you know, all of the third-party accounts of what was really going on. She wanted to hear it from the people herself. So she took the trip to South Africa. And but she had also gone to Kenya and Nigeria and other places in Africa, too, and she didn't understand why South Africa was such a big deal. And so when she got there, that was a huge thing because they wanted her to play for two different audiences. They wanted her to do a show in the daytime because the blacks, and this is, I'm using quotation fingers right now, the blacks and the coloreds were not allowed in certain areas of the country after dark. Like, they had ID cards and they had everything. So, but it wasn't until, like, it's really hard to get a grasp of that way on the other side of the world. And so when she went over there, she found out that they wanted her to do two different shows. So one show for the blacks and the coloreds, and then another show later for a whites only crowd. And it was because the particular venue, because of where the venue was, blacks and coloreds weren't allowed to be on that side of town after a certain hour.
Interesting.
Blew her mind. Like, what? Like, it was just, even being a Southern girl, that was just like, this is not happening. You know how we say now, like, this is 2020, this is not possible. That's exactly what she was saying at that time. Like, this is 1980, whatever. This is not possible. Like, this is not the 50s and the 60s. Are you kidding me? And so she refused to do it. She refused to do it. And so she ended up having, they were protesting her in South Africa because he was an American that refused to perform for a whites-only crowd. It was crazy. So it was crazy. And so few people know about that. So now you have her, you know, African-Americans, and I don't know if they will call it, I don't think the label African-American had been penned yet at the time, but you had blacks in America who were protesting her going, and then you had South Africans who were protesting the Americans for not agreeing to perform for a white-only audience. So she couldn't win for losing at that time. And she was staying at a hotel. It was nuts. It was nothing. It was very scary for me because there were no cell phones back then. You know, she called on a specific day of the week at a specific time. So, you know, we knew when to be around the phone if, you know, because this is when she was calling and she needed to talk to everyone and be caught up, you know, on what was going on. And that's when she told us when, you know, all of the details of her trip. And so it was a relatively long phone call because everyone got their time in at the time, you know. And so it was nuts because she was on the, like, top level of this hotel in her suite, quote unquote. And she's looking down and there are protesters in front of the hotel protesting her.
Wow.
It was really dangerous because she was like, are you kidding me? Like, she was just, it was crazy because she got to the point where she didn't even trust the food that was being brought to her via room service.
What a crazy story.
It was nuts, man. So very few people know about this, but the band members, they were able to go because, like, no one really knew, like, are you with Millie? Are you not with Millie? So they were able to kind of come and go kind of freely. They didn't answer any questions or whatever, but they would go and get food and bring it back to her. And it was crazy. So that happened she was in that room for me, that's kind of cloudy because it's about her recollection and the band's recollection. So I try to put all the stories together to get the whole story. But, you know, it was 3 days to a week that she was, you know, until she came to some sort of an understanding and agreement with these people that this is what she's going to do. And they ended up integrating the crowd.
Wow. That's history.
Yeah, it really was. And so there was a famous DJ over there, and I don't remember his name, like if you called it, I remember it, but you wouldn't call it because, you never heard the story before. But she's got a photo of him in her basement now on the walls because he was very instrumental in keeping the Black community in South Africa very abreast of what was going on in the moment. Like, she was talking to him. She granted him an interview, and he was keeping the native South Africans abreast of what was going on. Like, this is like Millie is fighting for us. Like, this is about, it was nuts, but it was a very dangerous thing for her. And I didn't know it in the moment because when she called, she didn't give us details like that, obviously, because she didn't want us to freak out. But the band, like some of the band's family, and they were like, no, this is what's going on. So we at home I got a real view of what's going on through a lot of the band members' family because they were talking to them.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, this stuff is very familiar, but not so much for me on the U.S. side. Like, I was seeing it as a kid, and my mother was overseas, and I couldn't see what was actually going on. But there was a lot of newspaper write-ups. It was crazy because a lot of the high-profile Black politicians at the time and, NAACP and everyone was very, very much against my mom for having gone, and they had no idea what she was dealing with when she was over there. So the crazy part was when she came back to the United States, she was doing, like, the first show that we did stateside, I believe was like Carnegie Hall, or the Beacon Theater in New York, and they were protesting her. And it was pretty violent because I almost couldn't go to the shows. Like, she was afraid for me to go because they were protesting, and they were like, Millie Jackson went to South Africa, and it was really a time when a lot of Black people were very, very, very conscious and very like, how could you do this? And so, we go into the venue and they're yelling profanities and they're, talking all this mess, and they're like, and she's like, they have no idea what's going on over there. It turned out to be a great thing that she went because the stories that she was able to come back and give firsthand, they really were so very different from the propaganda that was being sold to the Black community at the time. Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
And think about social media, how powerful it is now, and we didn't have it back then, where real time it could have been disseminated the information real time about really what was going on, and the fact that she integrated a crowd was to me that's history, and if people would have known that back here, they may have thought differently.
Yeah, and she ended up like she was blacklisted along with a lot of other entertainers, a lot of hip hop entertainers, a lot of like rock, genre entertainers. Yeah. Like a lot of people were blacklisted, and I remember her having to go to the UN to plead her case, get off the blacklist. It was nuts. It was her and a lot of musicians, like big musicians, massive. So it was crazy.
You talk about overseas, I know you're very popular in the UK, Germany, and Japan, and some others over there. But when you travel over there for a show, do you see a difference in the crowd that you perform for there versus in the U.S.? I mean, do crowds differ from place to place?
They do, but I would say for the most part, overseas, and not just Europe, but just overseas. Period. There seems to be a greater appreciation for Black music, period. Definitely a huge appreciation for soul music. Like, they get it. They know all the words. Like, they're crate diggers. Like, they know all of the deep cuts. They know all of it. Every word of it. And they may not even understand what they're saying, but they feel it. Like, it's always been that way. And that's why when I was a kid, my mother stayed overseas so much, and so many of the soul artists survived and got paid dearly for performing overseas because people here just didn't realize it's very hard to and it's always been difficult to break music here. But there's a really sincere appreciation for soul music overseas, even to this day. And so when you are looking for like deep cuts and relics. Like if you go on the internet and go on eBay, most of that stuff is coming from Europe because they're collectors and even the interviews, they go deeper than just the surface stuff that everybody asks. You know what I'm saying? Like when I had my album on Sony, I did, just you have to do a whole media situation. Like, as a new artist on a major label, you kind of in this room and you're making all of these, well, back in the day, you would make all these phone calls to every like there were 4 and 5 pages of phone numbers for radio stations, the programs directors, and I literally had to spend a week at Sony, and I would report every day, and I would start at the top of the list and check them off, who I would call. Hi, thank you for playing my record. Hey, this is Keisha Jackson, da-da-da-da, and do an interview. And so yeah, that's just kind of what you had to do back in the day, because you came to the label to do that,
Right.
But it was still hard breaking a record here. And for me, personally, it never really happened like I wanted it to. Well, let me say this. Not like I wanted it, like I thought I would. I was just kind of riding the wave. So whatever happened, because I didn't set out to be an artist. Like everything happened for me kind of happenstance. Timing-wise, I wasn't really looking for it. So I was just kind of riding the wave. But every time I performed overseas, it was like, wait, you know the words to this song? Like, in my first album, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even like it. So when they were singing those words, I was like, oh, my God, I'm so mad at you guys for knowing this record. You know what I mean? But, yeah, like, they had it, and they had the singles, and, they were making their own compilations from, songs that they liked and selling it. It was crazy, and a lot of people got upset with that. For me personally, I was like, okay, if you like it, I love it. That's fine. Make a compilation out of it. I wasn't getting any money off of it, but I was like, I wasn't getting any money off the sales here, and because it just didn't do that much anyway. So I was like, well, have at it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems there's students of music over there.
It's like for any artist who, I would just encourage any artist to take advantage of the opportunity to perform overseas. Like you really will. It's such a way of it's a great reboot. Like you can be working your butt off here and get really frustrated, and you go over there, and even if it's a small space or like a very a small country or just a small venue, they know your stuff. They know your movements. They know your runs, your riffs. They know everything. It is crazy because, I've had people say, oh, my God, when you sang this line right here, you sounded just like your mother, and we were wondering if you were going to sing it, if you sounded like that. I was like, what? Like, it was, so it's crazy, but I'm used to it now. I love it. Because the audience, they really appreciate the music.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that you're definitely right there. One of the other things that I noticed is you're a life coach and also a vocal coach. And, one of the things that, obviously, and on my podcast, we have a lot of independent artists that we celebrate, and, we help support them get to the next level. And we do that by having celebrities like yourself on our show, and really kind of offering, words of encouragement, maybe inspiration. But as a life coach and a vocal coach, I mean, what words of advice can you give to our listeners to kind of get to that next level and kind of keep, especially now with COVID-19, nobody's really performing, but what kind of encouragement can you give our listeners?
Well, let me say this first. As a vocal coach, the vocal coaching actually inspired me to become a life coach, because I realized that artists were having a difficult time getting a breakthrough. Like, you get to a certain part of your voice or a certain song and you feel like it's a challenge and you can't really do it. And I realized a lot of that was locked up in old experiences. And so that's what inspired me to become a life coach, because I wanted to have the proper tools to help them get a breakthrough. And so much of it is mental. And so if I had to give anyone words of encouragement, it's basically get out of your head if you can. But think of it's all mental. It's mental. Get out of your own head. We are our own worst critics, and we have this template of perfection. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're supposed to perfect standards, as artists. And you should, especially like when I came up, it was, when you're talking about in the 90s, it's, you have to, there's a look and there's a way. And, they were signing artists that couldn't sing but had a great look, and they looked the part. And, a lot of that is in 80s and 90s music. And so now have evolved, and they're still evolving, but you have more of an opportunity. It doesn't matter how you feel you look, or whether you believe you'll be accepted because of your imperfections, but your imperfection is part of your artistry. That's part of who you are. It's all you. And so that's what the world is not perfect. And so they don't perfect doesn't resonate to them. It just doesn't resonate to them. That's not real. And so as long as you are your authentic self, then you will win, regardless. If it's for me, if there's one artist, or if there's one artist in the making, an upcoming artist, that is inspired by something that I did or something that I said, then I feel like I won. And so it's a matter of keeping. You have to. It's about self-reflection, and you have to really kind of keep yourself. You have to stay on top of your own mindset. Like, what are you in this for? What are you in it for?
Right.
Are you in it for the fame and the notoriety? Like, because that's everywhere. That's on Instagram. Like, you can be an Instagram famous in a day. Like, and so if it's about the art, stay true to it, and you'll be gratified. You'll get what you want out of it.
That's great advice. That's something that, we talk a lot to the artists that we have on, also about the evolution of music. And like you said, some of the younger ones coming up right now, first of all, it's changed. The days of recording studios, unfortunately, are going away, and there's digital streaming right now. It wasn't a thing back when you started, and
that's the hardest part for the art, because you don't get, it's the money part of it. So now artists are making their money from basically performances. You know what I'm saying? And going totally independent, like doing it yourself. It's a lot of work. But when you come out on the other side of it, it's so worth it. It really is. It's so much work. Oh my God. And I think the key to it is always having a team of people around you, whether, they're friends, but people who really know you, and that's going to keep you true to yourself and don't get caught up in all the shiny stuff that comes along with it. That's really important. Like, your team is really important. There's someone in your team or in your family, someone very closely connected to you, maybe 1 degree of separation, that is incredible at social media promotion. There's someone else that is incredible at, singing and harmonizing. And so, there's someone that's incredible at business, and they went to school and they graduated and they got all the paperwork and they got all of that, and they've got so much hustle in them. And so there you have your promo person, your road manager, your background singer, and we always I feel like we look a little too far beyond ourselves and our circle to find what we need. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's not right there in your circle, but if you are surrounded by your people, then when you bring that other person in, there's no shenanigans happening. You're covered. You're protected. Like, you have all of your people, and that person is the stranger in the circle. So you welcome them in, and they will do right by you, because you have so many with you that have your back. Like, you can't lose.
I'm glad you said that, because that's the one biggest thing. I think that when people in the industry, they fail because they have somebody on their team that isn't there for their best interest. And if you have somebody if you have like a team of people, like you said, that are close to you and you know them for years, you already have a head start, I believe. And the one thing that I'm telling, I tell another thing I tell younger artists is, I think when they think they get a management team, or they think they get a promotion team, that they don't have to do anything on their own, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not true. I mean, you still have to work on your own to work on your own brand, right?
You do. And to be honest with you, you have to, there's checks and balances that has to happen. You can't just turn your business over to someone and not know what's going on. This is how so many artists back in the day got screwed. You know what I mean? This is how Tony Braxton and TLC ended up having to file for bankruptcy. Like, because it feels so good, and people distract you with they dangle all the shiny stuff in your face. In the meantime, they're, like my mother's road manager used to call it, pencil whipping. Because, like, basically that's what an accountant do. They get that pencil and that numbers, and they get those, and that log, it tells the truth. But people change the numbers around and do what they need to do from your merchandising, so you have to be on top of everything. You have to have everyone that works for you has to be held accountable for what they're doing. Right. So it still doesn't behoove you to just sit back and let someone else do all the work. Like, you still have to do the work. Right.
Absolutely. And that's, and one other thing that I think people make mistakes on is the fact that they think if they're going to put music on digital, streaming, that, if they get, 1 million views or listens, that they're going to be, again, they're going to be famous that way. But again, that's just one element. Put your music out and to market it is one thing, but you also have to have, be well-rounded and be able to, perform for the people, and also get yourself out there on either social media or doing, appearances where you're actually meeting your fans and being accessible to those fans. And, talk a little bit about social media, because I know you're on social media, but you also have a podcast called The Vent Box every Wednesday on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And when speaking of social media, let's tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So the podcast, that was born out of COVID, basically. Especially in the beginning, like during quarantine, we were all just kind of sitting around trying to figure out, like, what is going on, almost petrified to leave your house. And, I'm talking about like April, May, especially. It was just like, okay, I'm going to the store once a week. I'm going to get my groceries for the week, and let me hurry up and get back inside. You know what I mean? Because it was like a scary monster that was out there. But the Vent Box, I just wanted to, I did radio before, and unofficially, there's a radio host here who used to have me on with her during mornings, like, whenever you want to come, just come. And I was considered an unofficial friend of the show, and I loved it. And I had a show on Dash Radio with James Brown and Isaac Hayes' daughter. It was called Soul Sisters, and they're still doing it. I just decided to leave.
Sure.
So I did that for 3 years as well. So during COVID, I was kind of like, okay, so I with the life coaching certification, I was like, okay, what can I do to kind of get this in motion? Because I use it so that I can have the proper tools to help my vocal clients. But people don't really know that I'm a life coach, because I hadn't really put it out there and, branded it and did all that stuff. It's kind of in my back pocket for whenever the time is right. So I felt like, okay, what can I do to just get some conversations started? And so many people were complaining about COVID, I mean, obviously the protests were happening, COVID was happening, the protests during COVID, this current administration, like, it's been a lot. And so I just wanted to kind of get the conversations rolling, and I didn't want it to look like it was COVID. So everything was popping up with split screens, and I didn't want to do that. I was like, okay, so maybe I can do this kind of like, when you call into a radio station, and people call and they say how, they need advice, and, or they tell you what their situation is, and you talk to them. And so I feel like I'm pretty lighthearted. And it's just in how I deal with everyday things. I try not to ever get too heavy, and because there's enough of that. So
it's exactly. It's too heavy nowadays.
So I decided to do the event box. And so I do it from home. And basically people call and they vent about the smallest things to, really important things like political things. And, but someone might complain about someone, having a mask on and then removing the mask to cough in their hand. Like, wait, what? This lady just did what in front of me? Or traffic,
Sure.
People who are single people during COVID, there are trust issues and like, oh, well, not so much right now, and now it's time to, everybody's trying to get their political alliances, that's what's sitting out front right now because November's right around the corner. And so you have those kinds of issues. And then you do have people that are racially profiled. And, so there are really serious issues. And then there are not so serious issues, like Amazon didn't deliver my package on time. And I, and so it's really cool because people, people are honest and there's no judgment.
Right.
And just say how you feel. It's cool. It's a way for them to, my mantra is let it out so you can let it go.
That's great. I think that's awesome. I mean, I'm definitely gonna catch that. So yeah, everybody check that out every Wednesday on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And the other thing is, I see performances with COVID, and a lot of people are having to postpone or cancel, but people are getting creative now too. I mean, venues are getting creative with performing, and I see you have some performances coming up. So let's talk about Yacht Rock Review. So what is that? Tell our listeners what Yacht Rock Review is all about.
Okay, so Yacht Rock Review is the band. I've been with them for about 5 years now, and they're a great group of guys. Yacht Rock, if you're not familiar, it's like soft rock from the 70s and 80s. And so it's your Air Supply, your Hall & Oates, your Doobie Brothers, it's all that, and it's awesome.
Right.
It's awesome, and it's feel-good music, and I'm not really sure why it was termed yacht rock, but I mean it's basically like, is this what they play on yachts? I'm not really sure, but the term it's kind of flew, and now it's its own genre, which is really great, and and so I've been singing with these guys for about 5 years now. We came together from a random corporate opportunity that we both had, and we met there, and so it was kind of like, hey, and then so they asked me like, we kind of need a female singer. First, it was just for kind of fill-in gigs, like when we're missing someone, would you come in? And then, I'm full on a member of the band, and when they were looking for another member, I brought my daughter in because she's a bona fide soprano.
Wow. So the family is continuing the music legacy. That's awesome.
Exactly. So yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So Yacht Rock Review, that's fun because we're playing. We'll do Christopher Cross. It's just really good feel good music, and so the crowds are massive and they're great and they're tried and true. Yeah. And we did an album that was released, and the single was released like just before, like at the end of the year actually, and the album release was actually right before COVID hit, which super sucks. Sorry. Yeah. But that was horrible. So we were in, but the cool 360 moment was, we had just done the Mission Ballroom in Denver, and that was in early March. Late February, early March, and it was the album release, and it was sold out, massive spot, bigger than even the Tabernacle here in Atlanta, like massive spot. It was great, it was incredible, and then 2 weeks later, we had to come home because what's going on? Like this thing is real. When COVID first hit, we kind of thought. I think everyone kind of thought like, oh well, that's over there, that's over the water, that's not us. It just boom, like it just happened. Like, okay, so this is really real. And they started closing down venues, and we are on the road, and now it's looking like, so the state of California now limits the, large gatherings of 100 or more. Then it was overnight, 50, no more than 50. And it was like, okay, it's time to go home. Because we were worried that we might not that we might have to isolate wherever we were. You know what I
Right,
mean?
exactly.
And that was early stages. Like, we didn't know what the heck was going on. We just knew, you know, they were talking about, because remember there was a problem with Americans overseas trying to get back. And so
That's right.
we were across the country, and we were like, we better get home. And so we just went and posted up at the airport and just got on the next flight that we could, and that's what we did. Like, we literally just ended it dead, came on home, and did what we had to do. But with the quarantining, like, we are now starting to see things, you know, like you said, see some creative things happen. So we've been doing virtual shows, and we've done some drive-in shows, and the three, you know, which is weird. I haven't gotten used to it yet, and I hope I don't have to get used to it, although I appreciate it. You know, driving gigs, like, you know, so they're honking horns instead of applause. You know, it's still appreciation.
Yeah.
It's just weird, and it's weird because you don't get that energy coming back from you. People are sitting in their cars, and so you know, they're probably in their cars yelling like, that's my song.
It's going to be odd for a little bit.
We just came back from Denver this past weekend. That was cool. It was an outdoor gig, social distancing. You know, now people are much further away from the stage. You know, they have a blockade, and so we can't interact with the audience. But it was like, wow, okay, so we came back. You know what I mean? It looks a little different.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, it felt good. It felt good, and it made you see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, baby steps getting back to normal again. Now, on the 17th, there's the Galactic Laser Stallion live stream debut. So I'm guessing this is a live stream show. So talk about that a little bit for our listeners.
Okay, so Galactic Laser Stallion is kind of an alter ego, the alter ego of Yacht Rock Review. It happened by having, so basically what happened was Samsung, you know, they're coming out with new products, and they asked Yacht Rock Review to be the face of these products. And so it's kind of a spoof, well, very much a spoof of 80s rock and roll. So there's the big teased hair and the eyeliner and very Bret Michaels, you know. And so, but this is all done for promotion. This is all that. This is not even for, you know, quote unquote regular people. This, you know, this is just for basically for training. These are training videos.
Okay.
For people that have to sell the Samsung phones as they come out. And so the 6 songs that we're going to be performing for the live stream they're all about the phone.
Right. Okay.
S-Pen experience and swipe up, swipe down.
Nice.
And, you know, literally all the lyrics.
Yeah.
Power, more battery power. You know, it's all that kind of stuff. And it was great. It was super awesome. And so they were like, so the name of the band is Galactic Laser Stallion. And I was like, what? you know, anything can happen. You just kind of have to, like, you know.
Got to roll with it.
This is, like I said, for companies to learn how to use the phone. So it's available, like you can see the stuff on YouTube, but you'd have to, you know, it's not concerts. And so this is just the live stream that we're going to do is basically Samsung promoting their new phones is coming out.
I want to tell everybody about KeishaJackson.com. You know, I've been on the website for a couple of days now, and I think it's really awesome the way you have it laid out. And I just want everybody to go there. And it shows your performances coming up. It shows your photo gallery. It has your video bio, which I think is incredible. Ladies of 60s soul. You have a lot of really cool things on here. So I just want to tell everybody, and you also have your links to your social media on here as well. And then, you know, some of your songs as well too. So I just want everybody to go to KeishaJackson.com and check it out. Keisha, it's been really a pleasure. You're wonderful. It's just awesome to talk to you tonight. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come onto my podcast. I really do appreciate that.
Thank you for the invite. And I also want to give a little quick plug, shameless plug for Daughters of Legacy. That's the group that I started with myself, Isaac Hayes, Betty Wright, Ray Charles, Issa Pointer from the Pointer Sisters, It's a bunch of us. You know, it's a bunch of us, and we perform our parents' music, and you know, that's great too. So just kind of look out for Daughters of Legacy as well. We debuted it at the end of 2019. Right now I'm trying to go through dates and stuff like that between my own dates and then the Yacht Rock Review date, and I'm trying to get some Daughters of Legacy dates squared away, you know, and confirmed on the calendar now. But definitely, yeah, there's some footage on YouTube, and all of that stuff is available at KeishaJackson.com. So, you know, a link will send you to a link, which will send you to another link. So go ahead and go down the wormhole and enjoy yourself.
That's awesome. That's incredible. All right, so everybody check out Daughters of Legacy on KeishaJackson.com. Again, Keisha Jackson, thank you so much for joining me, and it's been a real pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.